In this video, we be Tholin. We be Tholin. Hello everyone, Bront CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and we are here to talk about Tholin Foulbeard. We are going to make this video a lot of fun. We are going to do this guide. I promised you I would do this guide. Honestly, I promised I would get it out on Thursday, and that is not going to happen. For, among other reasons, the fact that I've already filmed this video once and my mic may or may not have been connected properly to my OBS. So we are recording now. Yes, we are recording now. Absolutely great. And you know what? I've got a lot of great research I have done, but we're going to do it all again. We are going to cover every topic again. We are going to make sure that I go over Tholin, tell you what I think about him, tell you how to build him, tell you what is the best way to sort of use him, and just kind of show you how good of a champion he is. Now, we're going to be talking about Thor a lot in this video, and that is because Thor is the preeminent damage-dealing fusion that we have had in the past year. Now, he was the first event fusion that we had. Then we had Alice with Mad Hatter. Mad Hatter, also a very good champion as well. Thor, very good champion. And Tholin is honestly a very good champion. I'm going to spoil this to you now. He's a very good champion. But we're going to compare the two, kind of talk about where they are as far as 1A, 1B, or maybe 1 and 2 or whatever else. You know, which one they are going to excel at, why they are going to excel in different roles, where you might want to build them a little differently, where you might want to build them the same. And, you know, we're going to do some damage tests to just flat out compare the two of them as far as damage is concerned. So, without much further ado, let's be Tholin. So first off, when we start these guys, I always like to look at the champion himself, and he is absolutely amazing. He's got this really cool demon head on there. I like all the little fire they've got going on with him. He is absolutely amazing looking. I think they've really knocked it out of the park with him. He's one of the better looking dwarves in the game, I think. And Raid continues to evolve their look, and it's actually kind of unfortunate because a lot of their earlier champions do not look this good. But, you know, hey, I actually would have no problem if Raid did a visual pass on a bunch of the older ones at some point in time. It would be fine as a quality of life update. I think it would actually bring life to the game as well. But he's awesome. I love this little demon thing in there. Again, love the fire, love the burning, love the little bits of chaos that's kind of infected him as well. It's a very cool look. It fits in with the event, and he just looks absolutely amazing. As far as the kit goes, he is a damage dealer. He is a legendary attack champion. He is force, and I think it's actually an interesting and good variety to be a force attack champion. Honestly, there are not a ton of them that are great, and honestly, as far as fusions are concerned, there have not been anywhere near as many force fusions that have been good that I would certainly like. So, you know, he's been a good champion. Again, I've mentioned before, spoilers, he is very good. He's going to pass a lot of these tests here. So, first of all, we, as the A1 here, is an AoE A1. Before attacking, has a chance to place weaken 25% bookable to 50. That goes up to 50 bookable to 75 if it is Corrupted Alliance, a boss, or a minion. And it cannot be resisted by Corrupted Alliance, bosses, or minions. So for Hydra, he's going to have a 75% chance. Sniper is going to be key. Again, another spoiler, but Sniper Mastery is going to be key because the difference between this being 50 and 55% and 75 and 80% is actually bigger than you might think, especially because it grants him an extra turn if he puts weaken on every enemy because of this skill. So if you want to get this extra turn to proc every once in a while, you're probably going to want to get, Sniper, because Sniper will make sure that this lands more often and more consistently. His A2 should be an absolute nuke, is a double hitter. Each hit ignores 25% of the target's defense, 50% if it's Corrupted Alliance, boss, or a minion. Ignoring defense is the best way to do damage in this game, especially against endgame enemies and bosses, because ignoring defense ignores the damage reduction that you have. You can stack other damage reduction as well, or defense reduction as well. So things like lethal, things like savage, things like merciless, even things like cruel gear all help. Plus, you're going to want to go with Helm Smasher on him as well to ignore more defense as well. So you've got a chance to ignore 100% defense on a boss, a minion, or the Corrupted Alliance with this A4, or A2, I should say, on a 3-turn cooldown, and it grows his attack and it decreases the attack of the target. And these decreased champion stats are not resistible, so he doesn't even need accuracy for this part of his kit. Plus, he's going to stack his own attack up to 50% more attack. That's huge, and in long-term fights, that should continue to pay off with additional damage growth. So, absolutely amazing here. Finally, he's got the A3 here, attacks all enemies 2 times before attacking, places a 50% increased attack buff on this champion for 2 turns. For each critical hit landed on the first hit, increase the damage dealt to the second hit by 10%. So, against Hydra, for example, he should critical hit against at least 3 heads, if not 4, so that's 30 to 40% extra damage on that second hit. He also ignores unkillable and shield. Plus, he buffs himself with increased attack. So, he's a pretty complete kit as far as just doing damage, but he's not done yet. Activates Demon Breaker every 5th turn this champion takes. So basically, when he takes 5 turns, which again, to be fair, he has a chance to take an extra turn on that A1. Even if he doesn't, every 5 turns, he gets his A1 for free. Absolutely amazing. And then enemies from the Corrupted Alliance, bosses, and minions cannot land a critical hit on this champion. Now, and there's not a lot of bosses that can crit. In fact, the one I can think of off the top of my head is the Phantom Shogun. Other than the Phantom Shogun, there's not a lot of bosses that crit, but it is a good way to keep him alive. It also means that he's technically slightly tankier against the, what's it called? The Ice Golem, because the Ice Golem, while having a 15% chance to crit, can crit on the big nuke. Well, he can't crit Tholin, so that's great. A Corrupted Alliance? Well, Georgid is a Corrupted Alliance, for example. Rhodos is a Corrupted Alliance. He's also good affinity against Rhodos. There's a couple of good damage-dealing champions I can think of that suddenly can't get. Carnage is a good one. So this has got some use in Arena as well to help keep him alive. You're still going to probably want Stone Skin on him for Arena, for high-end Arena at least. But, you know, overall great. He's also got a 30% ally attack in all battles aura. Very usable aura when you don't need speed or have a speed or something like that. It's a good aura if you're just looking for damage. It's also a good aura if he's going to be the lead in some wave clear teams, which, you know, honestly, his kit looks like he should do just fine. So let's, let's take a look at how to build them. All right. These are slightly different masteries, and there's a pretty good reason for them. Now, usually on the support tree, I will usually grab this one and then go over here and grab this one. The thing is, with the Tholin, because the only ability that's going to land a debuff is his A1, he is never going to get this plus accuracy on any skill that actually cares about it. Now, if you decide you want to put Brimstone on him, then okay, maybe this accuracy might help for him landing Brimstone. But honestly, I don't think you really need this skill, so it's probably fine. It's probably fine to not deal with. So, and then Shield Breaker, or Shield Bearer, I should say, not going to help him. He doesn't put shields up, so that doesn't help him either. So that leaves Exalted Death, which heals him a bit. Very good for a wave clearing champion who may or may not one-shot the wave or two-shot the wave. It gives him some extra tankiness. It gives him some nice health when you're in Arena, when that might be very useful. It's it's decent enough. It's not the best mastery out there, but we're talking a tier 2. So, you know, at least gives him some utility over the other two that are pretty much useless on Tholin. So Swarm Smiter, well, that's extra accuracy he still gets, so that's particularly good. You could maybe argue for Arcane Celerity, but he's not landing a ton of debuffs, so I don't think that that's a great one. He does buff himself a little bit, but only himself, so rapid response is not particularly good either. So I think Swarm Smiter is probably the best one here. I like Cycle of Magic because his A2 and his A3 do hit pretty hard, so getting those back is really nice, even if the A1 is a chance where he can get some of his extra turn mechanics going as well, which is not too bad. He'll get free A1s occasionally anyway, so he might get an extra turn from that, who knows. But Cycle of Magic is just a nice one to grab. You could argue for Lore of Steel, not a bad one to grab in general, especially if you're going to be putting him in something like Merciless gear or Stone Skin gear. That extra stats when you've got a bunch of other that the extra stats from sets can be very helpful on some champions depending on what gear you're going to put on them. So Lore of Steel is not bad. You could maybe even argue that Evil Eye is not horrible for him because it does do some turn meter decrease, but this could get you in trouble with some champions where you do not want to be able to do this, like Marius, for example. And You know, it's only 5% because it's an AoE. I actually am not a huge fan of the 5% with AoE. I like the 20% as the single target. It's a nice way to kind of pick one person and say, you don't go quite as fast as you thought you were going. So I really do think that Cycle of Magic is the right way to go. And then finally, we talked about Sniper being the right thing to do. Sniper is going to help him land more weakens, and that's going to make a big difference. So on the offense tree, we've got Deadly Precision, pretty much makes sense. Keen Strike. I really like Whirlwind of Death because he's going to be killing waves, so that's a good chance to get some extra speed. But this one's actually kind of tough. In fact, so is the top one here as well. You could argue for Heart of Glory because if other people are going to keep him healthy, then he's going to be in great shape and always going to be topped up where he'll always be doing that extra damage. You could possibly argue for Grim Resolve because if he's going to be taking damage a lot, he might be under 50% pretty regularly. And honestly, you could argue for Shield Breaker. He does ignore shields on one of the attacks, but that's just going to be doing more damage in general against shield champions. But that I think is a little more niche where he's likely to either be at 100% or below 50%, and I think one of those two pays off particularly well. I don't think it's super important which one you pick. Either one of them is fine. I do like Life Drinker on him, though, because I think he is more of a PvE focused champion. If you're going to use him in PvP, then you're going to want to take Single out instead. You could certainly, Whirlwind of Death, I think, is absolutely amazing. It's a great one in Arena and in Not at the Arena. It doesn't help in much in Hydra, unfortunately, but it does help against the Doom Tower waves. It can help in Arena. It's huge there. So I really like Whirlwind of Death for a lot of content, just not necessarily for Chimera or Hydra necessarily, where you're not going to be getting those kills to stack that speed up. That said, Ruthless Ambush can be good if he's going to be your main nuker and going to get that first hit a lot. But once that first hit is done, this is done, which is kind of why I'd prefer to either have Single Out, which could get used multiple times over the course of a fight, particularly against a clan boss of something like that. And or Life Drinker is useful, as well as, of course, Whirlwind of Death. Here on the next row, Bring It Down is really, really good. If he's going to be a solo farmer, you could certainly say Wrath of the Slain brings a little extra damage involved. Otherwise, I like Cycle of Violence, especially if he's going to absolutely nuke and trigger this regularly. The ability to get back to your skills is very powerful, much like I said here with Cycle of Magic. So I think this is a very good one to go for him. Opportunists, maybe if you're going to be in Arena and rely on some of these stuns and sleeps and fears and controls, and to be fair, they are pretty popular right now with some of the meta, but I don't think that is quite as good as far than just Bring It Down, which is everyone's going to have more max HP than him, and I like Cycle of Violence. Finally, Methodical, his A1 is a major damage source, so getting extra damage on that, very, very good. And then Kill Streak, great. You could certainly argue that maybe Blood Shield's okay, but since he's not going to have a ton of max HP, it's not going to be a big shield. This is a good one for HP-based nukers, not for as many other champions. And then finally, Stoked Fury, maybe okay in Hydra, probably not great in a lot of other areas. And then finally, Helm Smasher, if you're doing any sort of ignore damage build with him, so if you're doing lethal, Helm Smasher is great. If you're not doing lethal or something else that's going to ignore some defense, you still might want to go with Helm Smasher just because of that A2 that ignores 25 or 50% already. Otherwise, you could certainly argue that War Master is still a very good skill, particularly because with an AoE against things like the Hydra boss, War Master is going to add a ton of damage. So if you're a very early account that happened to have gotten Tholin and you cannot get him in Savage or Lethal, then War Master might be the way to go to start with, and then spend either the free refresh you have of your Masteries or later on 150 gems, and eventually once you can get him in Savage, line it up with Helm Smasher and you will be much happier with the build. As far as relics are concerned, I have went with the Coronet just because it seemed like the right thing to do. I could certainly argue that maybe I should actually go with, I've got, a couple of these Malefic Talons. That would be a good one. That would give me 21% extra crit damage. And on top of that, it would give me a 20. If I got it up to level 3, it would be a 30% chance of doing 10% more damage. The Talon might be a little bit better overall on him, but once the Ornate Crown actually kind of cranks up the damage, which to be fair, he does need to do his A1 and land a bunch of weakens for that to happen, but eventually he will land some of those weakens and get extra damage, and that is just a flat damage buff that is on top of all of the other damage, whereas the crit damage here plus the extra 10% is not quite, because it stacks in with the rest of his crit damage as well. But Malefic Talon's another good option on him. Honestly, I probably should do testing to see which one of these is better. We're just going to go with the Crown for now, though. But you know, the other one that would be good for him would be a Cat's Gaze if you have it, or anything else that helps him either ignore additional defense or just do more damage because it gives him extra crit damage and or extra abilities to do damage based off of some of the stuff he does. So honestly, I think that these two are probably two of the best ones here. You could even argue with something kind of fun like the Orb could be interesting because he could be stealing a bunch of buffs occasionally. But honestly, I think you're better off just sticking with damage and going with something like the Talon or the Coronet. As far as the blessings are concerned, again, because he only lands the weaken, this is not as good as it could be and definitely not as good as Thor. But again, Thor is going to be running pretty similar stuff in these cases here. Nature's Wrath is probably the best way to go anyway, because you don't need to land a lot of debuffs to get up to this 8%, and that 8% damage is a permanent 8% extra damage. Eventually you get him up to stage 5, which I'm hoping to do. That'll be 15%. And that, keep in mind that Thor has a 5-star blessing. So when we talk about some of the comparisons we have, he has a 5-star blessing. So he's getting an extra 38% crit damage, and he's going to eventually get this extra 15% over 8% damage increase just from having this going on right here. So that is certainly something to worry about. Plus, I think he is going to have the Coronet ramp up just a little bit faster. And again, this sounds like I'm telling you that, you know, Thor is better. I'm giving you context for why the numbers might be better. So, or maybe they won't be. We'll certainly see. I'm going to do some testing. So it'll be fun. So regardless, you've got the Coronet, you've got the Nature's Wrath. Don't want Nature's Wrath? Well, other options for you are certainly Brimstone, because he's going to have some accuracy due to that A1. So if you have accuracy on him, Brimstone is not bad. Sheep is, or Polymorph, I should say, is certainly a staple in the arena, but it's certainly becoming less so, especially for damage dealers. He could be the beneficiary of a Soul Reap, particularly for wave clear. Soul Reap can be amazing because that can add a ton of extra damage and a finishing move that you might not have finished somebody off otherwise for. You certainly could argue Ward of the Fallen, maybe, but I don't think that's as good as other ones for him. You've got, you know, Heaven Cast is certainly an interesting option for him. If you're going to put him in Stone Skin, Lightning Cage is not too bad. Plus, he does buff himself a little bit as well. So Lightning Cage would give him a chance to keep those buffs on him, which would keep him doing a bunch of damage as well. He does have a nice aura, so Intimidating Presence could be interesting as well. Finally, where is it? Here we go. Crushing Rend. If you get a 6-star blessing on him for Hydra, Crushing Rend probably would be the way to go, because that will give you a bunch of extra ignore defense on every ability. So enough so, in fact, that you almost could ignore Helm Smasher in some cases, because you might be able to stack up enough to be 100% or near 100% even without Helm Smasher, making maybe War Master suddenly becomes interesting again. I don't know. But Crushing Rend is a great PvE 6-star blessing. If it's not a 6-star blessing, it only works for the first and second hits, which can be okay if he's going to be a single round wave clear, but not great beyond that, which is why I think Nature's Wrath is probably the best one around for him overall. As far as gear is concerned, this is how I have built him. I have him in some Perception and some Lethal gear here with some Fury or some Feral and some Pinpoint here. He needed the accuracy. He only has a 3-star soul compared to Thor's 5-star, so he does not have the extra 75% accuracy, or 75 points of accuracy as it were. So it was a little rougher getting him to some really, really good stats. I still got some really nice stats on him. I like this attack. I like this overall. He is in attack percent boots with a speed ascension and some speed substats. He is in attack percentage with accuracy on here. He is in a crit damage glove with crit damage ascension. He is on, I've got attack here. I've got, you know, attack on the ascensions here. I don't have any materials to re-roll any of this stuff. Otherwise, I would roll this up to get an additional 12 points of crit damage. It is a little unfortunate. You're just going to have to understand that his crit damage is not going to be quite as good as Thor's. But one of the things I'm going to do is when we actually test this out, we are actually going to go in and we are going to grab Thor's gear, because if I look at Thor's gear gives me a little more accuracy, about the same speed, about the same attack, but a significant amount of extra crit damage here. So just to be fair in the comparison, we're going to use Thor's gear when we're comparing the two champions on both champions. Obviously, Thor has got slightly better gear because Thor, not slightly better gear. Thor is going to have this extra 12% on the crit damage for crit. Thor is going to have the extra 12% crit damage here because I can't re-roll it, unfortunately. See, he's got that here. Plus, he's going to have the soul as well, so he is definitely going to have more crit damage. So do keep that in mind, that Thor has more crit damage. Technically, he has less attack, but again, that can be a function of multipliers as well. So we're going to compare the two of them, see how well they stack up against each other, and see, maybe one of them will be significantly better, maybe the one of them won't, but I think it's going to be a good comparison just because I think Thor really is the most recent damage dealing fusion we've had, and definitely the best damage dealing fusion we've had since maybe Rhodos. Yes, Rhodos was a fusion way long ago. I wasn't even playing then when he was, so I didn't have a chance to get him either. Now, before we go over to the arena, let's go over my free-to-play quickly and talk about the build on the free-to-play. Now, I mentioned that you really want to try to get crit damage gloves on him, get that 100% crit damage. You want the crit rate, you want some accuracy, you want some speed. Well, I can't do that on this account and get him in Savage. So I got him in crit damage gloves with crit rate that Ascendant crit damage. So overall, his stats are not as good as they could be, but still pretty solid. I went with the Tholin on this particular account because I don't have a lot of the coronets. And I think that works better, particularly because his crit damage is kind of low on this particular account here. I did go with speed boots instead of attack boots. You'll notice I don't have ascensions, a lot of my gear on this particular account, because I don't do a lot of ascensions and I can't re-roll them. So I kind of struggle with them. That said, I did get kind of lucky on this feral, event thing here, crit damage amulet here. So, awesome. That's definitely helping a ton. And, that type of stuff is helping me get the accuracy I need for landing debuffs in general. Overall, once I get a 5-star soul on him, which I'm probably going to get, I'm assuming I'm going to because I'm definitely aiming for it on this account, the 5-star soul is going to do a lot of extra heavy lifting on this account because that's going to add a ton of extra damage with the blessing that I'm going to throw on him again, which would be Nature's Wrath. But on top of that, it's going to give him a ton of extra crit damage and a ton of accuracy, making it easier to build. So on this particular account, I might actually be able to ditch this for an attack banner, especially if I have a better attack banner than I do for this particular pinpoint accuracy banner. So the soul is going to do a lot of heavy lifting. And as far as why the rest of his stats are kind of weak, if you look up here, he is level 2, but a 6-star ascended. So I have just not had a chance to do much with him since I 6-star ascended him yet. I'm still working on his masteries. As you can see here, I don't quite have all his masteries. I am working on, finishing up, but I've just had a few other things I've had to do that have been more prioritized on the free-to-play account. Don't worry, he will get fully built and he will be absolutely amazing on this account. Just in looking at the damage with what he is for, I honestly cannot wait to use this dude on this account. He is going to unlock a ton of stuff, and honestly, he may compete for Alice with playtime on this account because honestly, I think he might be out-damaging Alice. All right, so this is the team we're going to use. Part of the reason I'm using Arbiter in this team, normally I wouldn't actually use Arbiter in some of these tests because I'd like to have just kind of see how they're doing even raw without the increased attack. But Thor and Tholin both will put increased attack on themselves on one of their abilities, which means they can generally be relied on to have it up enough of the time that it's worth in figuring out how much damage they do with it on. So I'm going to use Arbiter because I'm not always going to use the ability that puts increased attack on them first before they do whatever they're going to do, just because these waves are not going to last long enough. So let's take a look here. Let us go into the battle here. I've got this on 1x. So we get our increased attack here. We get our decreased defense and weaken up here. Nobody resisted. This is great. By the way, that she is in Feral as well. So that's going to add some extra damage here as well. And we'll do Thor's A3 first. Single hitter. And he was doing 180 to 212, which is pretty darn impressive. That's a lot of damage on a 3, and that's actually not his biggest damage ability. His biggest damage ability is this A2 that we've got right here. Get that out again. And then finally, you're going to do this. So this is going to scale up every time it hits. So you'll see we went all the way up to 460,000. So that's huge. And honestly, that is going to be kind of hard to deal with, but it only works on the 5th champion because the way that works is it slowly but surely scales up how much damage it does, and I believe how much defense it ignores every time it hits somebody else. So it just keeps on going up and up and up until it hits some level of maximum. And I think 5 is where it does. So it's not going to be quite as sick against Hydra, for example, but it's still a very, very good ability. Finally, let's just take a look at the A1 because it's always nice to see if somebody hits hard with the A1 is absolutely impressive. Thor does have a double hitter on the A1, so keep that in mind. We are going to go for Elenarl. Elenarl is not going to be a corrupted member, so we're not going to have any corrupted issues anyway with Tholin. And 67,000 and 86,000. So a very, very good and hard-hitting A1. Absolutely impressive. Good showing by Thor. So let's go take a look at Tholin. All right, so here we are. Just to show you guys, we are actually going to equip that. Dang it, I wanted to use a free gear removal. Oh well. So we have that equipped, and there we go. There goes 1,000,000 silver. Thanks, Polarium. And Tholin is in Thor's gear now. So let's run this. Again, the same setup for the same reasons. Tholin increases his attack as well. So we will start off, I'm going to start off with the A1 just because I'm kind of interested to see what his A1 does because that looks like it could be a big damage dealer and that's going to be important to his kit. So we start off with the A1 and that A1 killed absolutely everybody. That is insane. That's a lot of damage. Yeah, Thor did more damage to a single target with his single hit, but the fact that he did almost as much damage as Thor did in a single target to everybody on an A1 is really, really impressive. So let's go take a look at his other stuff as well. All right, so we get this all set up again. All right, go for the A2. This is going to be a single target attack, and this is a double hitter. So if we only get one hit, we only get one hit. Remember, this ignores 25% defense, 50 if it's a corrupted. Okay, he did 100K on the first hit, one shot kill. So he would have done more than 100 on the second hit because he would have increased his attack by 3%. Although I don't know exactly where that shows up. So maybe he would have done exactly 100 again. But that is a huge double hitting A2. That is definitely harder hitting than Thor's A1. And it's going to slowly but surely grow in damage. And because it ignores defense as much as it does, that's the type of ability that you're going to be able to use in Hydra to hit against the for example, the Takey head, the head of suffering, that is so hard to do damage to because he's got such high defense. Well, he's ignoring 50% of that defense plus an extra 25 plus an extra thing. He's ignoring 100% of the defense on that, doing pure damage. He is going to be able to boost your damage against that head specifically significantly with that ability. So far he's doing really well against Thor. I mean, Thor had the really, really massive A3 or A2. So let's take a look at Tholin's A3 here and see how this does. Remember, this is the one that gives him increased attack as well by default, so that's great. Gives him, increased attack. All right, and this is a double hitter as well. So did 100,000 and then 130,000. Was actually pretty insane. So that did more damage than Thor's A2 from what I can tell. And it was a double hitter as well. So yeah, that is a good hit. Is it amazing? No. Is it on par with Thor's A2? Not necessarily. However, it's still a very good hit. It still ignores shields, still ignores block damage. And, they're kind of neck and neck as far as the damage concerned. Thor doing just a little bit more in some cases, Tholin doing a bit more in other cases. I really don't think that one of them is necessarily head and shoulders above the rest so far. So let's go take a look at Hydra. Just to show you the Hydra team that I'm going to be running here, or at least I will have run, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I've got Uko here. He's in Provoke set. I've got him leading off with this as much as possible because I'm hoping I don't have to do a lot of revives with him, which is fine. Michinaki is bringing some damage. He's bringing Hex, he's bringing decreased defense. He's bringing some burns as well. We've got Thor here. Thor is bringing a bunch of damage. You do have to make sure that he does both of these abilities, or else he tends to not do one of them for some reason. It's kind of weird. Venus brings extra burns. She brings decreased defense and weaken. Very, very good champion for Hydra. Freya brings me some provokes. She brings me a cleanse with the block debuffs as well, and the huge shield to keep everyone alive. And finally, Duchess for the revive and emergency, as well as the veils to keep all the fears off of everybody as well. Overall, it works very well. This generally does about 250 to 350 million damage, depending on what's going on. Obviously, there's a little bit of RNG involved with it. And to be fair, with this team here, one of the strengths you could certainly have with Tholin is you may not necessarily need to bring a Venus if you don't want the weaken. If you have somebody that just does the decreased defense like a Michinaki, and you want to bring somebody else as well, Tholin also brings the weaken as well. That said, Thor brings the decreased speed, which is very helpful as well. So Thor's decreased speed is certainly going to help him do just a little bit more damage and keep the heads from taking as many turns. So that could prove to be another reason that Thor might be able to out damage a Tholin in a build like this. So Tholin's going to be dropped in. When I do Tholin in here, he's going to have his A3 as his number 1 and his A2 as his number 2. So the extra AoE and then the A2, which is the single target one, is going to be right there. So let's go show you the runs. I did record them prior, so we're going to actually just kind of show you the video that we had previously. So here is the run that I recorded previously without sound. In fact, if you look here, you can see me behind me. Ooh, spooky. Went to turn 205, did 284.11 million. Thor behind me did 143 million damage by himself. Michinaki did 87. Everyone else did a decent amount of damage here. Thor is a beast. Did a ton of damage in this particular run. And there's a reason I run this team as my regular team on Heart. It does a very good job without me having to invest in a lot of other champions. And my Thor, I use Thor all over the place. He's a really good champion. I like all of these champions. Honestly, the weakest point in this might actually be Mighty Uko. Maybe I could use somebody else that might be better for a block buffs champion. In fact, I think I've got some ideas on that, so I'll maybe play around with that a little bit later. But overall, this is my team. It's been a great team so far, and I've been really happy with it. So let's show you what happened with Tholin when we run Tholin. All right, so Tholin did not do as well. Went many more clan boss turns, actually, which probably didn't actually help because I probably had a few more pens people were eaten. Probably a lot of that is because of Thor's decreased speed. So yeah, it was not as good, it looks like. That's fine. But if you look at the damage overall, this is still very good damage. I am not ashamed to say that I have a champion that's doing 111 million damage in Hydra in Tholin. Tholin is a very good damage dealer. He's not quite where Thor is, and I'm not 100% sure. And to be fair, as I talked to you about this beforehand when we were talking about Thor versus Tholin, my Thor has got a bunch of extra crit damage that this Tholin doesn't have. So there's a chance that given Tholin with an extra 50-ish crit damage, in fact, it's 38 plus an extra 12, 50 extra crit damage, Tholin could be doing closer damage to Thor. Is it going to be perfect? Still probably not. It's still going to be a little bit below Thor. But that is not to say that Tholin is not a very capable damage dealer. And because Tholin does things slightly different than Thor, you might use him in different situations. Again, maybe Venus ends up not being in your team because you don't need the weaken because Tholin brings it. And instead you bring somebody else that might actually bring decreased speed as well. Other interesting options for you. So yeah, that's probably worth considering. But, Tholin did a great job here in Hydra. So let's try taking him in Arena and just see how he does in Arena with the build we got him in right now. Now, this feels very strangely appropriate. Thor versus Tholin. Here it is, all wrapped up into an arena fight here. Now, the way this team is structured, you've got Odin, who's mostly bringing the ability to strip, some decreased defense, and some stuns to help control. You've got Yumiko for the lockout. We have Siffy here for basically increasing speed and making sure that we guys go first and we get some increased speed. Does some block buffs as well. Gives you a reviver as well. Very, very good champion. I still like using my Siffy. It works well in this particular team as well because she gets the extra aura from Odin as well. Usually I run Georgette in this team, but we're going to run Tholin here just to kind of show what kind of damage we might be able to do. Now, Tholin's not going to be able to ignore any stone skin, so we're going to have to hope we can strip it off with Odin here. But let's go take a look and see what kind of damage we can do on this team here. We are going to turn this off of auto. We should win the speed race here because I've got a pretty fast Siffy and we've got a great aura here. So we do the extra increased speed. Not quite fast enough against the Arbiter as well. Good thing we did actually get the block buffs up here, so we are still in control on this fight. There we go, get all the strippage here, and we have got Tholin set up to do the actual nuke. Now we do have decreased defense in some of these cases, so that's going to help do a little bit of damage. But as we can see here, Tholin has no problem knocking everybody out, doing 60, 80,000 damage, and he's a double hitter, so if he's doing 60 to 80,000 on each hit, yeah, he's going to kill just about anybody in the arena. One more team I did want to bring this against here is we have this team right here. One of the things that Tholin does well is Tholin is the right affinity to get through a UDK. So if UDK has stone skin, you're still going to struggle with the stone skin a little bit. But in this team here, you'll find that Tholin really has no problem knocking down UDK if UDK has stone skin. He doesn't, which means this team is just probably absolutely toast. Once we lock them out, get those stuns out there as well, and then Tholin just says good night. Okay. Doesn't quite take out a UDK. Pretty impressive actually there. Mostly took him out though and took everybody else as well. He's doing a ton of damage. And again, he could be better with a better soul and slightly better gear. So yeah, is he a viable damage dealer for you in the arena? I think so. Is he going to be the end-all be-all meta damage dealer in arena? Probably not. There's probably plenty of other damage dealers that are better focused in arena. He doesn't have a lot of survivability, and if you're going to build him for the arena, you're probably going to want to build him with stone skin beyond just the savage or the lethal that you're going to want to put on him as well. So there you have it. That is Tholin Foulbeard in a nutshell. He is a great damage dealer. And when I say great, I do mean great. He is not necessarily a top 10 damage dealer, may not even be a top 20 damage dealer, but he is in the upper echelon of PvE damage dealers in the game. And the fact that this guy was available as a free fusion is absolutely amazing. Now, is he as good as Thor? No, but Thor is an S tier champion. So Thor is absolutely amazing. He's on a level all of his own. He is entering the arena of the great damage dealers in the top 10 or top 20 in raid, just in general overall of how he does his kit. So Tholin, darn close, gives Thor a run for his money, might just fall a little short, but you know what? He's still an A+ damage dealer and was available for free as a fusion. So hopefully you got him as a fusion, and if not, well, you know, this is one of the reasons I recommend trying to do whatever fusions you can, but this is also why when I see a fusion like this, I tell you, go for it. I called this guy being a very good damage dealer. I saw some of the testing that was done for some of the other content creators, and my own testing, he seems to do particularly well. So I'm excited to use him on both of my accounts. I think he's going to be an amazing addition to this account, and it's always nice to have alternative ways to deal damage or just champions you like to throw in for fun. And honestly, he looks like a fun champion because he looks cool, and honestly, it's kind of nice to have a top tier nuker in the force category on these accounts. So hey, hopefully you liked the video. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you were entertained. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I really do appreciate you guys and all the support. You guys have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend. And again, I am sorry for this being late, but at least I got it out to you. And I want to just let you know, I really do love Tholin. I think he's a great champion, and if you're lucky to have him, hopefully you can enjoy this. Just so you know, he was fully booked for all these testings, so, you know, there is that. I did not mention that, but he was fully booked for all this testing. And, you know, hey, appreciate you coming back here. Hope to see you soon. Till the next video, I'm Bront CatHerder.